No, pretty good set. I'm an assistant county attorney down in Glenn County, Georgia.
Could you spell your last name?
Sure, it's PRIEST-HYPHEN-GOODSETT. My parents gave me a bit of a mouthful. Now, our office address is 701 G Street, the old historic courthouse, Brunswick, Georgia, 31520. I'm not here to dispute any of the facts that are listed in the investigation report. However, I've heard several times today, specifically from Mr. G.B.R, that this board is focused on solutions and resolution. And that's exactly what the county did in this circumstance. With regard to the first potential violation that was discussed, with regard to Ms. Clark not assisting the voters in placing the ballots correctly in the envelopes, Ms. Clark has since been demoted and no longer has any input in the polls. She still works in the office, but she doesn't have any poll responsibility. Moreover, all poll workers now receive additional, more detailed training on the handling of provisional ballots because of this issue being raised. And I have both the election supervisor, Ms. Edwards, and Ms. Couch, and our chair, and of course, Mr. Wood, the complainant, is also here. And they can answer any of those questions about how detailed the training has now become. Now, the second potential violation with regard to Ms. Clark's misplacement of the provisional ballots and not going into the provisional ballot box as they should have. Glenn County has purchased ballot bags in which voters now place their own ballots, so they've taken the potential for human error and poll workers out of the equation to ensure that all ballots are placed by the elector into the proper ballot bag. And the ballot bag is also an improvement from the former banker's boxes that they used to use. So, again, Glenn County recognized this issue and responded. The third potential violation was the lack of two consolidated assistants. As you can sort of note, these ballots were found on November 10th, late in the day, and Ms. Edwards was confronted with a situation where she had less than a few hours to decide how to act. And because of that, I think because of that shuffle and that emergency, she only had one consolidated assistant with her. She'd also seen that. She'd worked in the election office for many years before she actually became the election supervisor and was promoted as such. And she'd seen that before, so she also believed that she was following protocol. In the two preceding elections since this election in 2014, she's always had two assistants with her, and she's well aware of that requirement now. With regard to the fourth violation, the 25 ballots that were placed back into the envelope such that their secrecy was not maintained. Glenn County again stepped up and said that now board members have to be present when those ballots are dealt with. They assist with both opening and separating and monitoring all poll workers that deal with those ballots. So that could never happen again. The fifth potential violation, the G.B.R ballots. This is sort of the same issue, the placement back of these emails back into the envelopes such that the secrecy wasn't maintained. Again, the same thing. There's additional training now. There's complete board oversight. And again, that also relates to the sixth violation, which was the identical violation in the election previous. Again, board oversight and additional training. And at that time, those ballots were covered in the investigation. So it's not as if we didn't act on the issue. As soon as the issue was raised and we realized that there was a problem, we acted. With the seventh violation, with regard to Ms. Couch's failure to reject an absentee ballot that failed to contain the signature on the oath, that was a human error. She missed a ballot. How do you solve that? Now we have two staff workers who double check each other, which they didn't have at that time. The Glenn County Board of Elections and Registration have had a municipal election in November of 2015 and a presidential primary election in March of 2016 without incident and with these new policies and procedures in place to ensure compliant and lawful elections. Every issue raised by the complaint have been addressed If the state election board has any additional questions, again, everyone's here to answer those questions. We all take the allegations extraordinarily seriously. However, in light of our response to these issues, I would ask this board to issue a letter of instruction or dismiss the complaint entirely. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I have a question for you.
Sure.
I know you don't, I don't want you to have to speak for your board members, but in your opinion, would you say that they're satisfied with the new procedures that are in place?
I wouldn't want to speak in place of my board, but what I would say is that I think the board as a whole is satisfied, and they've also been hands-on. You know, that when these issues were raised, the board acted, and all of these new procedures that I discussed and the changes that were made were with the oversight of the board and the desire of the board. So I think that the board is satisfied that these issues have been addressed.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the council? Mr. McGowan.
Would any of this activity have impacted the result of the election?
No, there was no misplaced votes. Although the secrecy of the ballots weren't maintained in a technical sense, none of that information was disseminated publicly. All of the provisional ballots that there was an issue with got properly counted and should have been counted. One thing that I think is notable is when those 2 provisional ballots were found, Ms. Edwards jumped into action. First, she called the Secretary of State's office to decide what to do. Then she called Kennesaw State University to try to determine how she should reopen machines so she could copy those ballots. Then she called my office at 4:45 and said, I've got 15 minutes, I need a legal determination now, which I think everyone here that's an attorney realizes that's not a position you want to be put in. And so we failed to render an opinion because we were unable to do the research in that short window of time. But I think what's notable about what she did was she made every effort to figure out how to do this correctly. And ultimately, she did the right thing. Those duplicates got back into an envelope, and that's a problem. And we admit that that's a problem. But she ensured that those votes got counted, and that she did it as appropriately as she could. And she tried to ask all the experts when she felt that her own knowledge fell short. So I think that she did everything in her power to do the right thing, and ultimately those votes were counted appropriately, and it didn't have any effect on the election.
You cited 2 elections since these changes have been made.
That's correct.
Are you aware of any complaints that have come from those 2 elections?
I'm not.
I guess I would extend that to these offices.
See, I'm not aware of any out-of-line investigations.
I'm not aware of any current complaints along those lines in Glen County.
So would you join us in concluding that perhaps these have been effective with change?
I would absolutely agree.
All right.
I have one question.
Judge Simpson.
You said that none of the results of any of these elections was altered by any of these mistakes. But with regard to allegation 5 in the investigative report, it says that one absentee ballot should have been rejected, but it was certified and counted. So that would have changed the result in terms of count of the votes. But was that not sufficient to
That's correct.
alter the outcome of the election?
That was not a close election. That wasn't an election where the vote would matter, or even within an exponent of
That's what I
that.
was trying to find out.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for the council? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Richard Wood, Board of Elections member, Glenn County, Georgia, 1815 Gloucester Street, Brunswick. This board has had some problems since I've been on it, 2014. And the reason I brought the complaint initially is because those problems I could not seem to get addressed at the board meetings. And this is I questioned the Wheeler matter. Mrs. Wheeler, her name is Edna Wheeler. The ballot was sent to her address in her husband's name. She actually signed the name Edna Wheeler, which is the proper name that she should have been registered under. And it seems that Seminole County has opened the door for one of the problems that we have, and as recently as our last meeting, trying to get a determination as to what is a legal name for a voter register. And we've asked the county attorney to provide such, and to date, I cannot furnish you a logical answer. It seems that the legal name is pretty clear in my assumption. But the problem is not that we are training and addressing these things. The problem is that we're not properly training and addressing these things. We have implemented programs that need more attention. I would like to see a lot easier access and cooperation from our board to make sure that these the poll workers are properly trained, and that the execution of these ballots, the provisional ballots especially, are handled properly. In the last election that we just had on March 1st, we didn't start the provisional ballot process until Friday. As it turns out, there was a problem that had to be addressed on Saturday, and just efforts from my person to get these slight matters handled have been met with resistance. I think that what is needed is a more focused direction by this board to make sure that the voters of Glenn County are properly represented.
Mr. McGuire.
How would you characterize the quality of the oversight by the board into this process?
Not very well.
Any other questions for Mr. Wood? All right, thank you.
I'm just sort of here to clarify. Mr. Wood is a valued member of our board, and I personally appreciate what he's done today because I think that he's brought about positive changes in our Board of Elections and how they're run. However, I would just point out that he is a single member of our board, and I think the board as a whole is satisfied with what's been done. And I'd also point out that many of the issues that Mr. Wood raised aren't actually before you. They're issues that he's continuing to investigate, and I think that those those issues aren't really before you now. And just all of you sit on a board, and you know that you don't always agree on what the correct path forward is. And Richard may not always agree with the rest of the board, and he may be frustrated by that. But the board has, in fact, taken steps and does, in fact, has participated in oversight that's unprecedented in Glenn County to ensure that these issues never happen again. Thank you.
Any questions for the council? All right, thank you. If anyone else wishing to speak?
I'm Ruby Robinson, Chairman of the Board of Education. I've been on the board, this is my second term. I can assure you that I have sat in on all of the training that has taken place since I have been chairman.
Ms. Robinson,
I'm
if
sorry.
you will, just give us your address, my apologies.
My home address,
That'd be fine.
3030 East 3rd Street in Brunswick, Georgia, 31520.
Thank you, sorry about that.
Since this all has occurred or happened, I have been hands-on, as you will. The rest of the board has been very engaged, if you will. We have put procedures in place that will remedy this. I have sat in on the provisionals. That was a big problem. It really was, and not having a review, person there to oversee that. But in that, I asked that she give out forms. She had forms that she did in her training, step by step, the provisions or the steps that should be taken, and those have been followed. I just sat through the ethics. I've gone through all of her training sessions, and I've made notes, and we have addressed them. So I feel that we're working together. Yes, maybe I inherited some things, or she did, that were not done properly, but we're doing a concerted effort to come together as a board, and we have open communication, which we have not had in the past. And I think communication is everything when you try to work with a group of people. Now, we have our disagreements, but the proper and professional thing to do is to talk them out. We do not go outside of the board as a person, as a single person, to address these issues. Anytime you work outside of the board, that you have your authority when you're in the board, but when you go outside of that, you're treading very lightly, in my opinion.
Mr. McGovern?
Just so we'll have a clear record, you mentioned that you're the chair of the Board of Education.
Yes.
Would you prefer to say election?
Yes, I did. Because I was chairman of the Board of Elections the 2 years and served on that for 8 years. I do that all the time. Excuse me. Yes, I am chairman of the Board of Elections. I'm so sorry. I do that all the
No,
time.
that's all right, we just need a clear
You know,
record.
you get the education in the election, but it's all intertwined.
Mr. Robinson, I got a quick question for you. So
Sure.
how many members are on your board and how are they appointed?
Well, we have 5. The Republicans appoint 2. The Democrats appoint 2. And it used to be the grand jury, but the county commissioner appoints 1.
Okay.
So we have 5.
All right. Any other questions for Ms. Robinson? Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this matter? All right, hearing none, do we have a,
I've got one question.
Mr. Simpson?
Me?
Yes, ma'am.
Sure. I know you. Make it easy. Make it light.
In your opinion, has the board reviewed the remediation efforts to correct these problems?
Definitely. Yeah.
Are they is the board as a whole satisfied with the efforts of the superintendent to correct these problems?
I think basically, yes. I mean, there's, we always address them and come to the conclusion, but we give when we come to a conclusion, then we relay that to the supervisor. And hopefully
Were
it
these
correct
issues discussed in the board meetings before the complaint was made?
Somewhat, yes. Yes. But then you know majority rules. When you talk about an issue and you bring it before and you vote on it, and sometimes people are not happy with the outcome.
Well,
understand what I'm saying?
What I'm trying to find out is if the issues were if the board was aware of some of these issues before it got to the point of having to bring it to the state board of elections.
Yes.
Could the local board have corrected these problems without bringing it to us?
That's hard to answer. I mean, because we did have discussions, and we did discuss the issues that were brought forward, and we thought they were concluded.
I'll just say, I was lucky enough to sit on in those meetings, and these issues were discussed at those meetings.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
All right. Anything else from the board? Thoughts on how to move forward here?
this case were bound over, then we could, we might have the opportunity to see some plan for further remediation of these issues. Is that correct? If there were consent orders discussed. Am I correct in that?
We could put that into a consent order if the respondents would agree to that.
Any other thoughts, motion?
Well, I feel this way. I think that the board as a whole needs to understand the importance of making sure that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted on all these procedures that are required in the office, and that the training encompasses all of these issues in an attempt to correct them before something occurs that does impact an election. I think we're lucky in the sense that this has been brought to us now before there's been any adverse impact on any election in Glenn County. But I do believe a little more emphasis needs to be made on correction of these than just a letter of instruction. So what I would do is recommend that we bind this over, and in doing that, hoping that we could arrive at a consent order that would address further remediation and training on these issues.
Was that in the form of a motion?
Yes, sir, motion to bind it over.
All right, Mr. Simpson's moved to bind over. Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Sullivan seconds. Any other discussion? Well laid out motion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank y'all for being here today. Okay, we gotta go back and, catch, 2013 number 54, which is the Lumber City to Telfair County case, which is, number 26 in our binder.
Kemp Clements filed a complaint with our office that had several allegations about irregularities during the November 5th, 2013 City of Lumber City municipal election in Telfair County. Some of the allegations were voters were turned away because they had post office boxes listed on their driver's license as their home addresses, voters being placed in new voting districts without being notified. Some voters were asked about past criminal activity. The investigation revealed that we were unable to substantiate those allegations, but found another issue while reviewing the documents. During the election, there were 6 provisional ballots that were not turned in by the city election superintendent, Amy Floyd. Ms. Floyd stated she had never processed a provisional ballot before, and when she contacted the chief registrar of Telfair County and the city attorney, she was told by the Telfair County registrar that she didn't have to open the provisional ballots because there weren't enough of those to affect the outcome of the election. The chief registrar was contacted by the investigator but denied the discussion. And Ms. Floyd, then she denied the discussion with Ms. Floyd that she shouldn't have counted the ballots. We recommend that Lumber City and Amy Floyd be bound over to the AG's office for the violation.
I assume we did notice this city and Ms. Floyd.
Yes.
All right. Any questions from Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
This is the case I asked about out of turn, I was on the wrong page. But I'm curious as to why the registrar, Rebecca Widener, is not listed.
Because the city conducted their own election, she only called Ms. Widener just to get information, as, I guess,
Well,
because she didn't know what to do.
would it be nice if Ms. Widener knew what the rule was?
I think.
Ms. Widener
Ms.
denied
Widener's
having a
denying.
conversation.
I know that, but I mean, if we get into the point of saying this, what this person told me is right and what this person told me is wrong, then we're adjudicating the case. We're not just referring it for probable cause. You see, we can't decide the fact issue. All we can do is determine whether or not there's probable cause to believe that there's been a violation.
Ms. Jones, in my recollection, when you talked to the registrar, she denied giving the information that Ms. Floyd said she did.
Correct. So she'd been
Chairman,
noticed it.
that's the point I'm making, is I don't believe it's our job to make that fact decision. I think it's our job is to determine whether or not there's probable cause to believe that Ms. Widener gave that information and what effect that would have had on the charge against Ms. Floyd.
Well, I don't think we're making the fact determination, but I guess the findings of the case are that Ms. Floyd, who I don't believe is here, is saying that the registrar said one thing, and then we called the registrar, and she says she didn't say that, which, from my view, being what I've heard so far, that could change with anyone else who may be here to speak. I would say that's probable cause for me to send it to the AG's office and let them interview both these people and see what they come up with. Not that they were necessarily saying, exactly what happened, but at least it's probable cause to continue the investigation and the prosecution.
Well, I agree with respect to Ms. Floyd, but I also thought that the case should be investigated with regard to the conduct of Ms. Widener and her advice.
Well, I think the only reason Ms. Widener was even mentioned was because Ms. Floyd said that was the advice that she gave.
She only contacted Ms. Widener just because she was a person to contact. It wasn't that Ms. Widener had anything to do with the election whatsoever. Just that in her role as chief registrar, she thought that, according to Ms. Floyd, thought that she could get information from Ms. Widener. Of course, Ms. Widener denies the conversation occurred. Lumber City conducted their own election. Ms. Floyd was the election superintendent. She was the city clerk.
Let me ask this if you don't mind. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in regards to this matter? Well, it seems to me that in this case that the superintendent obviously didn't open the ballots that they should have, and then when that was revealed and got caught, he went into CYA mode. That's what it appears to me. Any other questions from Ms. Jones?
Would it change the result of the election? By not opening the provisional ballot?
No, sir. But those 6 votes didn't get counted.
Don't understand that. So it did not, it
Didn't
wasn't
fade out from the
determinative
election.
with respect to the results of the election.
No, sir.
Do we know, I can't imagine that, well, I hate to say that because anything can happen and it does in an election, but I know our registrars are very well trained about how to deal with these ballots, and I cannot imagine them saying you don't need to open those ballots because it wouldn't affect the outcome of the election. I mean, that's completely a 180 from the way we treat every single ballot. It has nothing to do with with what the, whether the election's in doubt or not. All right, anything else for Ms. Jones? We have a recommendation. I move we bind over. All right, we got a motion by the chair and a second by Mr. Simpson to bind over to the Attorney General's office. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries and we bound over. And just before we move on to the Attorney General report, just to make sure we got the record straight here. So the only case we didn't act on was the City of Keysville, 2013, number 42. We're going to renotice and bring that back up next meeting, correct? All right, how's everybody doing? Anybody need a break? All right. All right, we'll move on to the Attorney General reports. As we have done in the past, we'll vote on these on a consent calendar unless anyone is here that would like to pull these out for individual discussions in the audience, or if a member of the board wishes to pull one out. So at this time, is there anyone in the audience that would like to pull out one of these Attorney General reports? Any board members wish to pull one of these orders out?
I would,
All right, what you
I'm
got?
not sure whether to pull out one or two, but I was interested in pulling out the McIntosh County 2012-131 case.
Tab 33.
And the Burke County 2011-95 case, which is at tab 40. Only, I guess my concern was they both impose a $100 penalty. And it seemed that, to me, in the McIntosh County case, there were a great many more violations than there were in the Burke County case. For
We'll pull those
essentially a
out.
violation of the same statutory provisions, so I just wanted to make sure. that this
Pull
was-
those out. Anybody else? Well, let's go ahead. If there's, is there anything else anybody wants to pull out? If not, we'll go ahead and vote to accept the other recommendations. Y'all are good. All right, so now on the consent calendar, we have 2014 number 35, 2014 59, 2009 61, 2011 71, 2011 23, 2010 111, 2012 number 7, 2012 121, and 2012 122. We can vote on those in block to accept the recommendations in the Attorney General report, if that's so moved.
I'll make that motion.
All right, Ms. Sullivan moves. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Worley. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That motion carries, and we have moved to accept those recommendations. All right, now we'll go to 2012-131 in McIntosh County, which is number 33 in our tab.
Yes, it was initially referred over for violations, both from the worker failing to initial the absentee ballots, the absentee ballot clerk, and also failing on some of those to put the date and time that they were received. And there were more ballots than the Burke County matter. They are both similar in that they're violations of the same statutory codes. Both also included violations for accepting absentee ballots that were missing either a date of birth or a residence, which we are recommending dismissing on both of those. In Burke County, they actually accepted absentee ballots without a signature, which was the difference, I think, between the two. They were essentially the same statutory provisions, but a different number of ballots. And so I didn't do a consent. I did not try to establish a fine based on a per ballot, but instead the type of error that occurred.
Well, our practice generally in the past has been to assess fines essentially on the number of violations, come up with a general idea of what's appropriate for a violation, and then multiply that times the number of violations that we've done. So, on that basis, it seems to me that the McIntosh County case warrants a higher fine.
Got a suggestion for that?
Well, this is a consent order, so I guess that was something that McIntosh County would have to agree to.
It's fine, sorry.
Would the county like to address the board in this matter? And you're welcome to, you don't have to. It's
Or
just-
if there's a reason that they don't think that that's appropriate, I'd be happy to hear it.
We'd be glad to answer any questions. I'm Ed Popple.
Yeah, sorry.
I apologize.
Come on up.
Attorney for the board and the county, and we'd be glad to answer any questions that you have. Where I think we're kind of caught flat-footed when we come to, to acknowledge a consent and an issue like this.
If you would, just give us your name and address for the.
My name is Adam Popple. My address is Post Office Box 2332, Darien, Georgia. Also present here today is Election Supervisor Dahl Gale and the Chairman of the Board of Elections, Bob Muhai.
Well, if I may?
Sure, yeah.
I can appreciate you feel like you're being caught a little flat-footed when a question like this comes up. But I assure you, you're not the first person that this has happened to, where a consent order has been addressed by the parties and the Attorney General, and then when it comes to us, we have the final say.
I'm
So
sure, I understand that.
we have the ability to say whether we like it or not. So, I don't want to put you on the spot to say, to have to agree to something at this point without considering it. And I would certainly like to hear from the other board members as to what they and whether they may disagree with it. And whether they have a particular amount in mind.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Simpson.
in the past, for example, with the G.B.R. County case, which we have not pulled out, but it's on a per violation basis. The fine is based on a per violation basis. That's felon voting. Those type cases have always been done. The fine has been based on the number of times there was a violation. And to me, it's a departure to do it by the nature of the violation rather than the number of violations. It seems like to me the more times you disregard the rules, the more egregious the offense becomes. So I agree with Mr. Worley.
Our office can certainly, I can certainly talk to Mr. Popple and bring it up at the next meeting if the board wishes to send it down. That's one option.
Well, I'd
Well,
certainly be amenable to that.
Well, let me, Mr. Worley, if you don't mind me asking, so what was it, because like we've dealt with, absentee ballots before when somebody was illegally handling, we would charge, I think $100 a ballot was our pass, but we're not talking about that here. We're talking about, obviously a lot of violations, but I guess in some respects technical in nature, certainly not to the level of illegally handling.
Right. And
So I don't remember what we've done in the past in that regard, quite honestly.
well, if we're doing a $100 fine in the Burke County case for 3 violations, and in this case, there were in one respect, there were 33 violations, and the other, there was an additional, another violation on 12 of those ballots, so, I'd be willing to say, okay, we have 12 violations here, and have a $400 fine, so that it would be proportionate to the Burke County case. Or,
If it's for 33 violations, then $100, so the penalty is $3 a shot.
well, I'm not sure that the 33 violations there are consistent with the same kind in the Burke County case.
In the Burke County case, they actually failed, the absentee ballots were actually failing, did not have a signature of the voter, or the signature of the voter's name. So it was a little bit different, even though it's a state's statutory provision, it was a different part of that statute on how the absentee ballots are marked.
And in this case, there were 12 ballots where both the date was left off and the ballot for signature was left off.
In the 33 ballots, my understanding, and from talking to the county, was that they in fact had certified. What happened was somebody had not, the poll clerk had not actually signed it, even though they had certified that the signatures matched on the ballot and the registration card, the ballot envelope, excuse me, and the registration card. So what was missing was that they had not themselves signed it, not that there was any information from the ballot itself, ballot envelope missing. For the 33. The additional 12 are the ones where they also failed to indicate the date and time received. And that was 12 of the 33, not an additional 12 of them.
You know, board member have anything? Mr. Popper, you got anything for us?
Yes, sir, just briefly, and I would ask that you entertain Ms. Gale also, just briefly. But it's my understanding that what this was a question of fact. There are two sides of the envelope. One side was preserved and one side was not, and it was our position that it was written on the other side of the envelope. And of course, now the envelopes, because of the record-keeping requirements at the clerk's office, those documents have been destroyed because it's been a while. And we were unable to go back and get them and provide that information to the AG. Having said that, we acknowledge it cost us more than $400 to drive up here today. So if that's the board's decision, we're anxious to get this resolved today. But I would ask that you hear Ms. Gill.
Well, the board is very, recognizes your time, and I know y'all are here when this case was presented before the state election board. You're here today for the consent. A lot of the people don't even show up for the consent. So I'm certainly willing to hear Ms. Gale explain the situation real quick, and then we can, if we can reach a resolution, I'm all for that, because I don't want you guys to have to drive to another meeting if we can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Eleanor Dahl Gale, 1150 O'Kane Avenue, Darien, Georgia, 31305. What happened was we stamped, when we received the ballots in, we stamped the front side of the envelope and when it's received, and then we go back and verify, and the clerk that verified it didn't initial on the side where the oath was. She had initialed on the front side, and when I checked with Chris Correa, I asked her if she had a copy of the front side of the envelope. She said no, all they had was a copy of the oath side of the envelope. But I had I call it my cheat sheet because I list all the ballots that come and go. When people deliver their ballots back in, I make them initial it, put the date and time on I call it my cheat sheet. And when I went back to it and looked, you could see who checked it in. It was one of the clerks in the office. But since then, we have got the 911 in place. We've got the auto precincting in place, which at that time, people were still using P.O. boxes instead of the physical address. I have all my office people now are certified. The last one went through in October. And we made a lot of changes in our office as far as absentee ballots and voting concerns.
Any questions for Ms. Gale?
I had a question. When you provided the copy of the one side to the Attorney General,
We didn't provide them. They went and got a court order. Miss Pam Jones went and got a court order to open up the box, and she made copies of the envelopes.
Okay.
So we just copied one side of it.
Yes, sir. And when I went back to the Superior Court clerk, Booty Goodrich, she had told her girls not to destroy those 2 boxes of 2012 election for that year, and by accident, they destroyed them, so we had no way of going back to the box to get the copies of the envelopes.
All right,
I'd like to make a motion then under these circumstances, if we would just accept the consent order as already negotiated by the Attorney General's office in both the McIntosh County case and the Burke County case.
well, let's see, if we're gonna talk about the Burke County case just because we got it off the agenda now, but, so we do have a motion to accept the original consent on, 2012-131, the McIntosh County, case, by Mr. Worley, and motion by Mr. Worley, and second by Ms. Sullivan. Is anyone else wishing to speak? I don't want to leave anybody out here. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries, and we'll accept that consent. Thank y'all.
Thank y'all very much. We appreciate you.
Safe travels. 2011, number 95, the Burke County case. Is there anyone wishing to speak regarding this matter? Is there any other discussion the board needs to have on this? Hearing none, do we have a motion, Ms. Worley?
I move that we accept the consent order as negotiated by the Attorney General's office in the Burke County case.
All right, we have a second.
Second.
All right, we got a motion by Mr. Worley, a second by Ms. Sullivan to accept the consent order in the 2011-95 Burke County case. Any other discussion? Anyone wishing to speak? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries, and I believe that's all we have on our agenda today. So if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, Ms. Sullivan moves that we adjourn. Mr. Worley seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries, and we're adjourned. And hope everybody has a safe trip right wherever you are headed this afternoon. Thank you.
I think she's
Well, they didn't shout.
What? What? One lady gave me hell, didn't she? One lady. The one lady from, I didn't get her informed. I know. I'm sorry.
And then we got married 4 months later.
That was the deputy's card.
That's all I did.
You might still be on film over there. Might still be on. I always do. We have a
I did.
Well, last year.
Thank you for waiting.
Russ came. And the women didn't show up, so the judges, I mean,
Mine are made and paid for. So.
well, she, thanks, Francis.
All right.
Am I on some of these? Okay. I think we can start having some here. Get some of these. We'll just move ahead one way or
Okay, yes, sir.
All right, good job.
I think that was, Carl. It was either Carlton or the other guy.
Okay.